Hello and welcome to Narayana IS. I am Pratik, your faculty for daily news analysis. Students, in today's session, we have picked up 4 important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. We'll have a detailed analysis of all the 4 topics which are important for both prelims as well as mains. But before we begin, let's go through a motivational quote so that you're motivated enough, to focus on the articles that we shall be discussing today, and at the same time, you're motivated enough to clear the examination, right? So what is today's motivational quote? You are capable of amazing things. Yes, are you? So often we question our ability, we question our potential, but the moment you start doing it, you understand your potential, you understand your capability. And that's the reason it said you are capable of doing amazing things. Just believe in yourself, have the motivation, keep doing it. Don't think, just start the action, and then you'll understand, you'll realize how things are falling in place, right? So before we begin the topics that we shall be discussing today, let me announce you our new initiative. Narayana IS will be soon launching 1 year and 2 year prelims cum means integrated program. All those students who want to be a part of 1 year and 2 year prelims cum means integrated program can scan the QR code that you can see on the screen, or you can contact on the given numbers and our team shall get back to you. Make sure you avail or be a part of this initiative so that you can maximize your chances of clearing the examination, right? So let us go through the topics that we shall be discussing in today's DNA session. The first article is taken from Hindu, page number 8. Now this article talks about the concept of heat wave when the IMD, that is Indian Meteorological Department, declares heat wave. Then we'll discuss the factors behind the heat waves, we'll discuss the impact of heat waves, then we'll discuss the heat action plan and what we can do in future in order to prevent the occurrence or frequency of heat wave. The second article is taken from Hindu, page number 8. Now this article talks about the reciprocal tariffs imposed by the United States of America and how the world is reacting to the tariffs imposed by America. Here we'll discuss how America is violating the World Trade Organization rules. Now we'll discuss the rules of WTO, and most importantly we'll understand the role of India, how India can emerge as a voice of the global south so as to prevent the hegemony of America. The third article is taken from Indian Express, page number 1. This article talks that Jal Shakti wants 12.79 lakh crore more for flagship water scheme. Now, in this article, we shall be talking about the Jal Jeevan mission and its provisions. The fourth article is taken from Hindu, page number 12. Here it says that 2 cheetahs move to new home in Madhya Pradesh. Now, new home is the Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. So the animals are being relocated from the Kuru National Park to Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. We'll understand more about the cheetahs and the new home, that is Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. So these are the 4 topics that we shall be discussing in today's DNA. Make sure you're fresh, you have a pen and paper to jot down the running notes, and make sure that by the end of this session you'll be in a position to recall all the important points that we have discussed in the 4 articles. On this note, let us get started with the first topic, and the title being Tackle Heat Waves with Short and Long Term Measures. So, UPSC relevance will understand about the concept of heat waves. You can mark this for prelims as well as mains under GS paper 3, that is Environment, Disaster and Disaster Management. Let us try to understand the context. Or why are we discussing this question? Because question on global warming, heat waves are often asked in the examination, as it was asked in the year 2022. Discuss global warming and mention its effects on the global climate. Explain the control measures to bring down the level of greenhouse gases which cause global warming. So this is a question that was asked in the year 2022. Now, given the increasing frequency of heat waves or heat related issues, there are high chances of UPSC focusing on this dimension and asking question in the examination. So let us get started. So now we know that India is witnessing or experiencing more frequent and intense heat waves. Now this experience India is experiencing much before, especially between March and June. Usually we see in the month of June, but now here we see the increasing frequency of heat waves occurring much before. Now these long periods of extreme heat are often called silent disasters. They are often called silent disasters. And why are they called silent disasters? Because their impact isn't always visible right away. But they affect our health, they affect our jobs, and even the environment around us. Now, please remember that India being a tropical country, right? India is already at risk. Why? Because of climate change. And India, in order to overcome this challenge, this problem, India needs a well-planned, let's say, combined effort, coordinated effort from all the sectors so that we overcome the challenge, or not overcome exactly, but at least manage the challenge, the threat of heat waves. So, well-planned, coordinated strategy is very, very important. Why? Because India is a tropical country. So this is the context, right? So we'll understand what is the concept of heat wave, we'll understand causes, factors, and how we can mitigate the effect of heat waves. Now, first and foremost, the definition. Definition of heat waves. Now, have you ever wondered what exactly is a heat wave? It's not just a really hot day. Now, a heat wave is when the temperature rises much higher than what's normal for the time of the year. This occurs especially during summer. The temperature is rising much higher than what's normal for that time of the year. And the most scary part, right? The most scary part being it develops slowly without any, let's say, dramatic shifts or dramatic signs. And that's the reason it is called silent disaster. Silent, but it is a deadly disaster. This is what we understand by the term heat waves. Now, IMD threshold. Heat waves are declared by the IMD when temperatures exceed 40 degrees Celsius in plains, 30 degree in hilly regions, and reach 40 degrees or more regardless of the region's normal temperature. So 40 degree it is for plains, 30 degree it is for hilly regions, and 45 degrees it is for any region, doesn't matter which region is it. So again, this is a very important point for your prelims examination. A very important point for your prelims examination. Now let us talk about the favorable conditions. Now imagine there's hot and dry air sitting over a region for, let's say, for days. Now there's no moisture high up in the atmosphere to cool the things. The sky is clear, so the sun beats down or comes down without any filter. Why? Because there's no cloud, and that's the reason the sky is clear. And on top of that, there's a system of anticyclonic condition. Now, what is this anticyclonic condition? Which means that a condition where the heat is trapped and the heat is not allowed to escape. The heat is trapped above the ground, and because of the anti-cyclonic circulation, the heat cannot escape in the atmosphere. That's when things get really very uncomfortable. This is what we understand by anticyclonic condition. The heat gets trapped. Now, talking about the heat index concept. Now, see, you have probably had days when the temperature wasn't that high, but it still felt unbearable, right? That's where the concept of heat index comes into picture. This was developed by the Indian Meteorological Department. When the temperature isn't that high, but it still feel that it is very uncomfortable. Now, why did the IMD develop this? To help people understand how hot it actually is, or how hot it actually feels for the human body when you, let's say, include humidity in the mix. It's really a very useful tool for knowing when to take precautions. Even if the temperature doesn't seem alarming. This is what the concept of heat indexes, and this was devised by the Indian Meteorological Department. Right? So we understood definition, we understood when the IMD declares heat wave, then the favorable conditions, anticyclonic condition, and the concept of heat index when the temperature isn't that high, but it feels very uncomfortable or unbearable. Now let us try to understand the geographical spread and vulnerability. Now, talking about the geographical spread, the core heat wave zone. Now, the question is, have you ever noticed how some parts of India seem to suffer more extreme heat wave? For example, if I talk about, let's say, the western part of India, Gujarat, Rajasthan. That's because there's a region called core heat wave zone. There's a region called core heat wave zone which stretches all the way from Gujarat to West Bengal, from west to east. This entire belt regularly faces heat waves between March and June, and at sometimes it also experiences heat wave in the month of July. It's like a zone that's just waiting to heat up as soon as the summer begins. It's that zone. Now, the vulnerable regions include states like Rajasthan, Delhi, Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Telangana, Vidarbha in Maharashtra, and coastal Andhra Pradesh are highly prone to recurring heat waves. Now, let's talk about how the heat waves spread. So, they usually begin in northwest India. Right? That's where the heat starts building, then carried by the westerly and the northwesterly winds. Westerly, so this again westerly and northwesterly winds. So the heat that starts building up in India's northwest, right? It gets spread because of the westerly and northwesterly winds. The hot weather, it moves slowly towards the east and the south. But here's something very interesting. The heat waves don't always need to travel. Sometimes they can actually develop on their own in a region if the atmospheric conditions are just right. So it can occur because of the heat waves traveling, or at the same time it can also occur when the uh, atmospheric conditions are there for the region, or let's say for the region to have heat wave. So pattern of spread, northwest, right? Northway, it sets in the northwest, then moves to east and south. The westerly and northwesterly winds carry the heat waves, and then again it is not important or not necessary for the heat waves to travel at times because of the atmospheric conditions. The region can also experience heat wave. So this is the geographical spread. Now let us try to understand the causes of heat wave. One is the high pressure situation. Now, have you ever felt like the air isn't just moving and the heat keeps building up? That's often due to high pressure system. So the air isn't moving. It is just, the heat is building up. Now the system acts, which system? The high pressure system. It acts like a lid. It traps the warm air close to the ground. It also stops the clouds from forming and blocks any rainfall, which means the land keeps heating up more and more, creating the perfect setup or perfect conditions for heat wave. This is the high pressure system which traps the heat close to the ground. The next is the weak pre-monsoon showers. Now, you might have noticed that when pre-monsoon showers are missing or suddenly stop, the days feel much hotter. That's not a coincidence. These are referred to as dry spells. These are referred to as dry spells, which means this specially occur during the El Nino years. El Nino years, which means there is no rain to cool the things down, which means El Nino condition is not good for our country. Now again, these are the geographical concepts. You need to read the basic, to understand how the El Nino, it stops the rain from falling in our country. So the sun keeps heating the ground without interruption, and that adds to the risk of a heat wave. Second is the weak pre-monsoon shower. Next is the delayed monsoon onset. Now, have you ever walked for the monsoon to arrive or waited for the monsoon to arrive only to find it's late? That delay can make the things worse. When the monsoon outset, when the monsoon onset is delayed, especially over central and the eastern India, the region stays hot for longer. This extended period of high temperature can turn into longer and more intense heat wave. This concept of delayed monsoon onset. Now, the loo winds. Now, if you live in the north or central India, you have probably felt the impact of loo. A dry and extremely, what are loo? Dry and extremely hot air that actually blows from northwest during summer. It can push daytime temperature up very quickly, making already hot conditions even more worse, and it makes people very uncomfortable. The next is the concept of urban heat island effect. Now, have you ever walked through, let's say, a city in summer and felt it was way hotter than the countryside? That's because of something called the urban heat island effect. That's because of this concept of urban heat island effect. Now, cities, because of the buildings, because of the roads and lack of, let's say, green spaces, it traps more and more heat than the, let's say, surrounding places, or let's say the rural places. This makes the urban temperature much higher, especially during the night. This is the concept of urban heat island effect. And then let us blame ourselves. The anthropogenic activities, which means the human made, let's say, actions like cutting down forests, then let's say burning fossil fuels, releasing industrial emissions, they are further warming up the atmosphere. This extra heat makes heat waves more and more frequent and more intense. So these are the 6 causes of heat waves. I hope you understood each and every cause of heat wave. Any question, please let me know in the comment section. Okay, now let us try to understand the of impact of heat waves. Now, have you ever experienced how the heat can drain your energy? Prolonged exposure to high temperature can lead to very serious health problems like dehydration, heat, let's say cramps, exhaustion, or let's say even heat stroke. Sadly, unfortunately, it is the elderly people, children, and people from low income groups who are at the highest risk of suffering from these heat wave conditions. And in some cases, it can also result in casualty, fatality, health effects. Mortality trends, a 34% increase in deaths related to heat waves was recorded between 2003 to 12 and 13 to 2022, highlighting the growing health threat posed by rising temperature. Then the agriculture disruption. Now, the heat waves, it also affects the food that we eat. This can be disastrous for agriculture. Heat waves can damage crops, and this can result in reduced yields and even make them more and more vulnerable to the pesticides. This disruption messes up the entire food supply chain, food security, and leads to higher food prices, and let's say eventually leads to food insecurity. What about the livestock losses? What about the animals that help provide us with, let's say, milk and other products? Now, heat waves unfortunately do not even spare the animals. They cause reduced milk production and also affect the fertility of livestock, which can again lead to food insecurity. Labor productivity decline. Now, high temperature can also discourage people from working outside. This can lead to decline in the labor productivity. This is especially true for those working in the informal sector, which makes up, let's say, a large portion of the India's workforce. Now, as a result, both the working hours and the wages tend to decrease. This is the impact. The economic cost. Now, you might be surprised to learn how much heat waves can affect the economy. In the year 2021, right, climate report estimates India lost 167 billion labor hours due to heat exposure, equating to around 5.4% of the national GDP, the highest among all the countries. This is how tense the situation is. And finally, wildfires and ecosystems. Now, the heat waves can also fuel wildfires, and their impact stretches far beyond fires. They cause large-scale damage to natural ecosystem, disrupt the biodiversity, and even affect the stability of glaciers. And then this creates a ripple effect on the environment. So these are some of the impacts of heat waves. Now, what about India's institutional framework to deal with the heat wave? Now, these are some institutions that you need to know. One is the Indian Meteorological Department. Now, this IMD provides early heat wave warnings, real-time weather updates, and then temperature forecast to reduce mitigation to initiate mitigation steps. So, once we get the warning from IMD, the government steps into action. The next, early warning system, a system called heat wave early warning system, is implemented to issue alerts and advisories to reduce the impact of heat waves. Next, we have the National Disaster Management Authority, which holds workshop and awareness program to enhance preparedness. Next, we have the National Center for Disease Control. This National Center monitors heat wave related illness through the Integrated Disease Surveillance Program. Next, we have the Health Ministry. Now, a program was launched by the Health Ministry which focuses on research related to climate change. So, these are the institutions. So, 2 to 3 institutions you need to know in order to write the means answer. Now, what is the concept of heat action plan? Now, as a response to heat waves began in 13 with Ahmedabad's heat action plan, which later inspired similar plans in 17 heat wave prone states across India from west to east. A typical heat action plan includes early warning, which is given by IMD, interagency coordination, community awareness, capacity building for medical teams, and vulnerability mapping. That is, the people from low income groups, the people from the informal sector, children, women. A step of practical actions involves setting up water kiosks, then shifting working hours, providing ORS packets, installing cooling systems, building gaushalas which can sort of trap the heat, and enhancing emergency medical support. So this is what we understand by heat action plan, which was initiated post the 2013 heat wave in the city of Ahmedabad. Later on was spread to different heat prone or heat wave affected states. So this is the concept of heat action plan. So how do we reduce the heat waves is a question. How do we reduce? First one is the cool roofs. Now, have you ever wondered how we can prevent the heat from getting worse? One strategy being used is the cool roofs, where reflective roofing material like, let's say, solar reflective paint or tiles are used to reduce the indoor temperature as well as the energy consumption. These are referred to as cool roofs, where the paint or the tiles are designed in such a way it reflects the sun, does not allow the sun to penetrate. The next is urban forestation. Now, this is the another approach to tackle the heat wave, which is urban forestation. This involves what is it? Right? Miyawaki forest. Miyawaki forest, right? Why? To increase the green cover, which helps counter the urban heat island effect and also improves the air quality. This is a natural way to cool down our cities. See, the Miyawaki forests, right? They are a fast growing, dense afforestation technology which was developed by a Japanese scientist, Miyawaki. It focuses on creating, let's say, biodiverse and self-sustaining forests in the urban areas. Next is the forest conservation. Now, forest conservation is another important, measure to, let's say, to reduce the impact of heat waves. For that, we have to protect and restore the natural forests, which will help reduce the temperature, because these forests, they act as carbon sink. It absorbs the carbon dioxide and then this helps to cool the environment. And then there's something called regenerative farming. This involves practices like using crop diversity, sowing different types of crops using minimal chemicals and techniques that help preserve the soil. And this makes farming more resilient to extreme heat and other climate related challenges. So these are the mitigation steps that you can mention in the main answer. Next, what is the way forward? Of course, going forward, it's not just about warnings but also the on ground action. Infrastructure support is very, very important. This means making sure people have accessible water sources. Let's say we have, ORS, creating cool shelters where people can take refuge, especially the informal sector workers. Next, workplace flexibility. Now, to protect the workers, a policy shift could eventually help. This allows flexible or, let's say, staggered work hours, which can help reduce exposure to extreme heat, especially for those working in the informal sector. Now, context-based planning, now which means not all the places are the same, right? So, context-based planning is very, very important. A simple message to stay indoors doesn't work in crowded urban slums. This advice needs to be tailored to local conditions, both social as well as geographical. The next is technology and alerts. Now, we can also improve our technology and alerts. Having a more advanced system that can predict thermal comfort and track both day and night temperature would help guide school, office and public activity schedules more effectively, right? And the last is social protection measures. Now, finally, the social protection measures are key to ensuring that everyone is covered. A policy that provides insurance for heat wave related wage loss and emergency support for informal workers, this can make heat wave responses more equitable and effective. And finally, in the end, right, India needs to treat heat wave not only as a climate, let's say, challenge, but also as a public health and social equity issue. By combining the short term with the long term solutions, we can build resilience against, let's say, the growing threat of heat wave or extreme heat. This is how we can mitigate and prevent the impact of heat waves. I hope I have covered each and every dimension. These dimensions are more than sufficient for you to write any question pertaining to heat waves asked in the examination. Right? Let us proceed towards the next topic now. Calling out American trade illegality. Here we'll discuss the implication of US tariffs and we'll also understand the WTO rules. This you can map for prelims as well as means paper 2, that is under international relations. Now see, question on WTO has been asked. As a reason it is important to understand the WTO rules. Now what is the context? On April 2, United States announced the imposition of reciprocal tariffs on several trading partner countries. Now, this decision of the United States has raised concerns worldwide. Why? Because it ignores the rules of the World Trade Organization. Now, although the US has paused the decision for 90 days, but the tariff on China continues. So, we'll try to understand the implication of US tariff war and how the USA is violating the WTO rules. Now, let us try to understand the nature and legality of the US tariffs. First is the unilateral trade measure. Now, see, the US is taking a unilateral approach by imposing these tariffs, and this the US is doing without following the rules or let's say the legal framework of World Trade Organization. Now, this is different from how the trade disputes are usually handled in a multilateral way. So, this imposition is not good. The next is violation of core trade norms. Now, what USA has done is it has bypassed the WTO principles like non-discrimination, the tariff bindings. We'll discuss the rules in the next slide, right? By doing so, the US is challenging the basic rules that actually regulate the trade between countries. Next, the global reaction. So, how did the world react? Now, countries around the world, right, have reacted in different ways. For example, countries like, let's say, China, Canada, Brazil, right, these countries and also Japan have criticized the US and have taken legal measures in the WTO against US. On the other side, countries like India have taken mild or have shown mild disapproval. And India has also remained silent. Why? Because of the diplomatic considerations. So countries have criticized, few countries have criticized mildly, and countries like India have remained silent. So let us try to understand the WTO rules. The first one is the most favored nation, that is the general on trade and tariff. The most favored nation under the GATT, that is the General Agreement of Trade and Tariff. So this MFN under the GATT Article 1, it requires the countries treat all the trading partners equally by imposing selective tariffs. So here the trade or the let's say tariff that you are imposing against one country has to be same for each and every country. But Americans have selectively, let's say, imposed a tariff which actually goes against the most favored nation principle. Most favored nation does not, by the name, does not imply that this is favoring a nation, no, which means a country should, let's say, adopt non-discriminatory approach when dealing with any other country. This is one. Tariff binding under the GATT Article 2. Now, according to the General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, Article 2, if countries, right, countries must not raise tariffs beyond the levels they have committed to. But what's happening in this case is the US is actually imposing extra tariffs that go beyond its agreed limits. This is clearly a violation of the tariff bindings rule of the World Trade Organization. Next is national treatment. Now again, under the GATT, right? The GATT article, article number 3, it says that, or it lays down the national treatment principle, which says that countries must not discriminate against the imported goods. Though not directly, the retaliatory tariffs imposed by the US may still create effects that go against this principle. And finally, we have the dispute settlement understanding. Now, the dispute settlement understanding says that countries must resolve the trade disputes through the WTO before taking action. First, you have to resort, you have to go to the WTO. But by acting unilaterally, the US is actually weakening the legal process that ensures fairness in the global trade. So the question is, how important do you think the WTO's dispute resolution system is for maintaining international trade peace? So these are the rules that the WTO has violated, or the US has violated. Now, what is India's position? And let's try to also understand the concept. See, India has been very, very cautious about publicly criticizing the US. Why? Because of the ongoing trade talks. For example, today, I think the Vice President of America is on a visit to India, has landed in India. So this approach seems inconsistent, especially when the US itself is both willing to negotiate and also criticize India. The President of America has publicly criticized the tariffs imposed by India on the American goods. So do you think India's hesitance is strategic, or let's say due to lack of leverage? What do you think? So what is the impact of US decisions on global trade? Now first, the US, right, disregarding the international rule, it weakens the WTO's legitimacy, and it actually causes a loss of confidence in the authority of the, let's say, a global body, which is the WTO, which means you're actually belittling the importance of a world body institution. The next is rise in protectionism. Very, very important. Now, a trend towards unilateral action could lead to retaliatory measures which could actually disrupt the global trade flow, and it can actually lead to trade wars. Every country will start, be protectionist, will try to, let's say, take care of the domestic industries, and this is actually not good for the global trade. For example, what if, let's say, India stops importing the, let's say, mobile phones from China? Today, so many people use the phones which are affordable, which are qualitative, and where are we getting these phones from? China. So let's say if we ban the import of, let's say, mobile phones, who is going to suffer? The people of our country are going to suffer, because people of country are getting, let's say, economical, affordable mobiles, and that to quality mobiles at a less cost. And this import can actually trigger, or can also nudge the domestic manufacturers to innovate, so that they can innovate, through which they can actually provide the Indian customers much better products than what Chinese or countries from, let's say, West are exporting to India. The next one is marginalization of these smaller economies. Now, smaller economies, especially the developing and underdeveloped countries, they depend on the legal predictability and fairness. And this, the decision taken by America, right, actually makes the entire world vulnerable. Why vulnerable to such unilateral action taken by the Americans? And finally, the disruption of global trade order. Now, if trust in multilateral institution like WTO breaks down, the global trade order could soon become fragmented. This would further strain the supply chains, and it would lead to global economic instability, which is again not good for the world or any country for that matter. Next, why India's response matters. The question is, the author of the article tries to suggest that India has to respond. Now, India's silence in this matter undermines the position as a leader of the global south. India claims to be a leader of global south, and India's silence is actually questioning the claim of India as a leader of the global south, because how can India remain silent when USA is unilaterally imposing taxes which is actually threatening the economy of many countries? So India's silence in this regard is completely uncalled for. This is what the author of the article is trying to say. So taking let's say a principled stance on this issue, even without direct retaliation, would actually reinforce India's commitment to global or upholding legal norms, or let's say to commit to global rules based governance, right? So you do not have to retaliate, but you can take a principled stance like we took during the Russia-Ukraine war or Israel-Palestine war. Coalition building opportunity. Now this situation presents an opportunity for India to build coalitions with the like-minded countries like Japan, South Korea, to protect the multilateralism and push for institutional reforms. So India should avoid compromising long-term multilateral predictability and let's say short-term bilateral convenience. As a major voice in the global trade, India should lead with principle and resist unilateralism by the US to preserve the integrity of the international trading system, which is the WTO. I hope you understood the article. Let us move on to understand or the third article. Jal Shakti wants 2.79 lakh crore more for flagship water scheme panel clears. So we'll understand about the Jal Jeevan mission. So this was a question asked on the Metropolitan Planning Committee. So questions can be asked on the different schemes. Now what is the context? The Jal Jeevan mission. What is the aim of this mission? To provide piped tap water. To whom? To all the rural households. A question can be asked in the prelims to confuse you. To all rural as well as urban. Wrong. Pipe tap water by ensuring universal access to safe and adequate drinking water. Now, significant progress has been made. Cost escalations and alleged irregularities in contract approvals have led to sharp funding cut recommendation by the Expenditure Finance Commission. So, because of the cost escalation, right, there it seems, or this committee has recommended for a funding cut. Now, this has major implications for the mission's extension till 2028. So this is the context. Let us try to understand about the Jal Jeevan mission. Okay. Now, again, these are the points important for your pre-examination. It is a flagship initiative of the Government of India launched in, please remember the year, implementing ministry. It is the Ministry of Jal Shakti. This was created in 2019 to consolidate all water related departments. So ministry is important for the examination, right? So please remember the ministry's name, and what is the key aim? Har Ghar Jal, water in every household, to provide 55 liters of potable water per person per day to every rural household. Now these are the very important points for your prelims examination. These terms are very important. 55 potable per person per day by the year 24. People centric, creating a Jan Andolan, that is movement by the people around water, encouraging community participation, ownership and responsibility to ensure long-term sustainability. Now, what are the objectives of the mission? To ensure the functionality of existing water supply system. The existing water supply system should be functional and household tap connection. First, whatever existing system we have, let's make it functional. Next, to establish regular water quality monitoring, testing and awareness generation at the grassroots village level. Water conservation, to encourage conjunctive use of surface and the groundwater, judicious use of groundwater, support augmentation of drinking water sources, increase the sources of drinking water so that to deal with the heat wave like situation, enable treatment and reuse of grey water to reduce water stress, right? So these are the objectives. Now, so let us try to understand the essence of what Jal Jeevan Mission. What is the essence? See, the heart of the Jal Jeevan Mission is about making sure that every rural household in India gets safe drinking water, which should be sustainable. So what's really special about this mission is that it doesn't stop at just building pipes and taps. It actively involves people in the process. It encourages them to take charge of their village water systems. So the system that this mission follows is that of a decentralized one. It empowers the local communities to manage water sources, then to maintain the infrastructure and also participate in the decision making. So the mission, it also promotes water conservation and let's say the sustainability of the drinking water sources. It helps people understand that protecting water sources is just as important as using them. In short, the Jal Jeevan mission, it shifts the perspective from getting water to managing water together. And this makes water not just a service but a shared responsibility. Now, why is the mission important? First is public health, which means it's important because it directly improves public health. Then talking about gender equality. Now see, when it comes to public health, when people have access to clean drinking water, they are far less likely to suffer from waterborne diseases like jaundice. This leads to better hygiene and reduces the strain on the rural healthcare systems like the PHCs. Talking about gender equity, it also makes a big difference in the lives of women and girls. Now, since they are often the ones getting water from far-fetched places, the mission frees up their time, makes them free from makes them free. Now, this gives them a better chance to attend, let's say, school, earn income, and also participate fully in the society. Rural livelihood and development. Now, have you ever thought about how much rural development depends on water? With a steady and reliable water supply, agriculture becomes more productive. Livestock can be, better cared for, and rural economy becomes stronger and more stable. Fourth, water security and sustainability. Now, the mission isn't just about using water. It's about protecting it too. It includes things like source strengthening, then water management, and also to check the water at regular interval. And all this helps to make sure that the water is available not just for the society, not for today, but for future generations as well. And finally, strengthening governance and institutions, which means the Jal Jeevan Mission, it strengthens the governance for the for the people at the grassroots level. So by encouraging communities to manage their own water systems, it builds local leadership, it improves transparency and makes the system more responsive to the real needs of people. So what are the key concerns and what can be the way forward? One is reduced central assistance. Now, one major concern surrounding the Jal Jeevan's mission is sharp reduction in central finance assistance. In the context we discussed that the Expenditure Finance Committee has significantly cut the funding for this mission, and this actually puts a burden on the individual states, and it also raises doubt about whether the mission can be implemented effectively. And what was the reason behind the cut? This funding cut did not come out of nowhere. It's been linked to, let's say, rising project costs and questions about how contracts have been approved, which means these are the governance issues. These issues have led to a breakdown of trust in how the mission's finances are being managed. Again, it boils down to the gaps in the governance process. And then need for reforms. Now, to move forward, reforms are urgently required. This means taking a fresh look of how the project costs are calculated, making sure there is full transparency in how the projects are carried out, and most importantly, to improve the monitoring system so that everything stays on track and people or the officials are held accountable. So, what's the way forward? So for the Jal Jeevan mission to, let's say, to succeed, it's not just about money. It needs strong institutions, close coordination between the center and the state, and just as importantly, involvement from the community members. That's how we can make rural water access, or let's say access, both sustainable as well as fair. So this is about the Jal Jeevan mission. Now this topic, or this brings us to the last topic of the day. Two cheetahs move to new home in Madhya Pradesh. So in this we'll discuss about the cheetah relocation project and the Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. So questions have been asked on different species, so it is important to understand this topic. So which means the two cheetahs have been relocated into the Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary. This is the context. Now background, what is it? Now the 6-year-old cheetahs were, now this is not important. Now the cheetahs were brought from South Africa to Kuno National Park. When? In the year 2023. Where is Kuno National Park? It is in Madhya Pradesh. So 4 more cheetahs from Botswana, again in Africa, are expected in May, with another 4 arriving later in phase 2. Project success. Kuno recorded the highest number of cheetahs birthed globally following the species intercontinental. Why? Because we got these cheetahs from African continent. Kuno hosts 24 cheetahs, 14 in the wild and 10 in enclosures. Efforts are ongoing to increase the prey base. Prey base, which means to increase the base where there are wild animals, so that cheetahs can actually attack, or let's say feed on the herbivorous animals like deer and wild boars, etc. What is the objective of the cheetah relocation project? To reintroduce cheetahs in India. Now this cheetahs was declared extinct in the year 1952. So cheetahs have been translocated from Namibia, South Africa and Botswana. Please remember the name of the countries in Africa. The project began at Kuno National Park, now being expanded to Gandhi Sagar, both being in. So these are again important points for your examination. Now what is the purpose of this project? To restore the ecological balance, especially the grassland ecosystem, and key activities, habitat development, which means you are developing the area where the cheetahs can survive, right? Prey base enhancement, so that the habitat is developed in such a way where the carnivorous animals like cheetah can feed on the herbivorous animals. Interstate and international coordination and monitoring via GPS collars. So through GPS collars, the animals can be tracked as well. Now, where is Gandhi Sagar Wildlife Sanctuary? It's in Madhya Pradesh. So again, district name is not important. Area is not important. River, the Chambal River, very important for you to remember in the examination. It cuts through this wildlife sanctuary, and flora and fauna found in this sanctuary. So we have chinkara, nilgai, leopard, wild boar, and various bird species. So please remember this one for your examination. I hope you understood the fourth topic as well. Now, yeah, this one too is important, the habitat type, right? So this sanctuary is dominated by dry deciduous forests, open grasslands and rocky landscapes, ideal for big cats. Recent development, it became the second cheetah reintroduction site after Kuno National Park, right? It plays a key role in biodiversity conservation, right? So these are the 4 topics of it. Let us go through a means-based question. So heat waves are no longer isolated weather events, but recurring disasters with deep socio-economic and health implications. Discuss the causes, consequences, and suggest a comprehensive strategy to manage them. So first, in the introduction, mention what the heat wave is, when the IMD declares heat wave, and then moving on to the body of the answer, where first mention the causes of heat waves. We have discussed the cause of heat waves, then discuss the consequences, even which we have discussed this part, and then how is India responding, that is India's institutional framework. Also discuss the heat action plan that was started in 2013 in Ahmedabad, and then finally way forward, the way forward, that is steps to mitigate the impact of heat wave. So this is how you need to approach the means based answer. Now this 1, 2, 3, these are the questions based out of today's DNA topics. I request you please go through these topics. The link mentioned in the description. Open the DNA quiz. Through the DNA link quiz, open the quiz, attempt the answer and post your score in the comment section. Let us see how many students get how many marks, right? So on this note, we come to the conclusion of today's DNA. I hope you understood each and every topic that we have discussed. Any question, any doubt, again I request you to please ask in the comment section, right? And before we call it a wrap, I request you to please hit the like, subscribe, and share it to as many needy aspirants as possible. Thank you so much for watching.